Imagine this. You're having a conversation with someone you trust, a friend, a partner, a family member, a colleague. By the end of the conversation, you feel confused. You feel guilty. You find yourself apologizing though you're not sure what for. And somehow, you've agreed to something you never intended to agree to. What just happened? You didn't lose the argument. You didn't get out-reasoned. You didn't change your mind based on new information. Something else happened, something subtle, something invisible. You were manipulated. And the most unsettling part, you didn't even see it coming. Manipulation is not always loud. It doesn't always look like a villain in a movie twisting their mustache. Often, it's quiet, subtle. It happens in the spaces between words, in the pauses, in the way someone frames a request. It happens in relationships you thought were safe. The people who manipulate aren't always bad people. Sometimes they're scared. Sometimes they're wounded. Sometimes they've learned that manipulation is the only way to get their needs met. Sometimes they don't even know they're doing it. But regardless of why it happens, the effect on you is the same: confusion, self-doubt, exhaustion, and a slow erosion of your sense of reality. Today, we're going to explore the psychology of manipulation, how it works, why it works, the specific tactics manipulators use, why smart people fall for manipulation, and most importantly, how to protect yourself. Because the single most effective defense against manipulation is awareness. Once you see the patterns, once you can name the tactics, once you understand what's happening in real time, they lose their power over you. This is not about becoming paranoid or seeing manipulation everywhere. It's about becoming clear about what's happening, clear about your boundaries, clear about your right to say no without guilt, without explanation, without apology. Let's begin. Part 1. What manipulation actually is. Let's start with a clear definition, because manipulation is one of those words that everyone uses, but few people can define precisely. Manipulation is the use of indirect, deceptive, or coercive tactics to influence someone's behavior or decisions, often against their own best interests. Notice the key phrase, against their own best interests. Psychologists distinguish between healthy influence and manipulation. Healthy influence respects your autonomy. It presents information honestly, allows you to ask questions, and gives you space to make your own decision. A good friend giving you advice is using healthy influence. A doctor explaining treatment options is using healthy influence. A boss offering constructive feedback is using healthy influence. Manipulation bypasses your autonomy. It aims to control you without your conscious consent. It uses deception, pressure, guilt, fear, or confusion to get you to do something you wouldn't freely choose. Clinical psychologist Dr. George K. Simon, who has studied manipulators for decades, defines manipulation as the use of tactics to gain power over someone or to get them to do what you want, often at their expense. The key phrase, at their expense. In healthy relationships, both parties benefit. In manipulative dynamics, one person gains and the other loses. Not always, obviously. Sometimes the loss is subtle. Your time, your energy, your self-esteem, your sense of what's real, your peace of mind. Here's what makes manipulation so insidious. It operates on a simple principle: if you don't know what's happening, you can't resist it. That's why manipulators hide their tactics. They make you think you're making free choices when you're actually being steered. They make you doubt your own perceptions, so you rely on theirs. They create confusion, so you stop trusting yourself. The philosopher and psychologist William James said, "The art of being wise is the art of knowing what to overlook." But when you're being manipulated, you don't know what to overlook because you don't even know what's happening. You're fighting an invisible enemy with no map and no weapons. The first step to protection is simply naming the enemy, understanding what manipulation is and what it isn't, recognizing that feeling confused, guilty, or exhausted after certain interactions is not random. It's a signal, and signals are there to be read. Part 2. Common manipulation tactics, the playbook. Now let's look at the specific tactics manipulators use. Learning to name these is like learning the moves in a game you didn't know you were playing. Once you know the playbook, you can see the plays as they happen. Tactic number 1, gaslighting. This is perhaps the most destructive form of manipulation. Gaslighting is when someone systematically makes you doubt your own perception, memory, or sanity. Common gaslighting phrases: "That never happened. You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. I was just joking, you can't take a joke? You're crazy. Everyone else agrees with me. Over time, gaslighting erodes your trust in yourself. You start to think, maybe they're right. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I did imagine it. Maybe I am crazy. The term comes from the 1944 film Gaslight, where a husband slowly convinces his wife she's going insane by dimming the gaslights in their home and denying it when she notices. He isolates her, contradicts her, and makes her doubt her own mind. Gaslighting is not just lying. Lying is saying something false. Gaslighting is making you doubt your ability to distinguish truth from falsehood. Tactic number 2, love bombing. This is common in the early stages of manipulative relationships. The person overwhelms you with affection, attention, grand gestures, and intense declarations. You feel special. You feel seen. You feel like you've finally found someone who truly understands you. Then, once you're emotionally invested, the affection withdraws. It becomes intermittent. You get crumbs of the love you once received, and you spend the rest of the relationship chasing the high of those early days, never quite getting it back. Love bombing works because it creates a powerful emotional bond quickly. And once you're bonded, leaving becomes harder because you keep hoping the love bomber will return to who they were at the beginning. Tactic number 3, guilt tripping. The manipulator frames themselves as the victim. They make you feel responsible for their feelings, their problems, their happiness. Common guilt-tripping phrases. If you really loved me, you would. After everything I've done for you. Fine, I'll just be alone then. I guess I'm just a terrible person. The goal is to make saying no feel like cruelty, to make prioritizing your own needs feel selfish, to make setting a boundary feel like betrayal. Tactic number 4, moving the goalposts. No matter what you do, it's never enough. You meet one expectation and the manipulator raises the bar. You achieve one thing and suddenly there's something else you should have done. This keeps you perpetually off balance, constantly trying to earn approval that never quite comes. You're running on a treadmill that keeps getting faster. Tactic number 5, silent treatment. Withholding communication as punishment. The manipulator creates silence not to process their feelings or take space, but to control you, to make you anxious, to make you chase them, to make you apologize for things you didn't do, just to end the unbearable quiet. The silent treatment is a form of emotional abuse. It's not taking space when you communicate that you need space. It's a weapon. Tactic number 6, triangulation. Bringing a third person into the dynamic to create jealousy, insecurity, or competition. My ex would never treat me this way. Everyone agrees with me that you're being unreasonable. Your friend thinks you're overreacting too. The goal is to make you feel isolated, uncertain, and outnumbered. Tactic number 7, playing the victim. When confronted, the manipulator immediately shifts into victim mode. Any attempt to address their behavior is met with, "You're attacking me. I'm the one who's really suffering. You're so mean to me." This tactic deflects accountability. The focus shifts from their behavior to your reaction. Suddenly, you're the bad guy for bringing up a legitimate concern. Tactic number 8, intermittent reinforcement. This is perhaps the most addictive manipulation tactic. The manipulator alternates between kindness and cruelty, warmth and coldness, presence and withdrawal. You never know which version you're going to get. This creates a trauma bond. Your brain gets hooked on the unpredictability like a slot machine that sometimes pays out and sometimes doesn't. You keep pulling the lever, hoping for the jackpot of the good version of the person. Research on intermittent reinforcement shows that unpredictable rewards are more addictive than consistent ones. This is why people stay in manipulative relationships. For years, they're addicted to the hope that this time will be different. Tactic number 9, future faking. The manipulator makes grand promises about the future moving in together, getting married, starting a business, changing their behavior. These promises are not genuine. They're tools to keep you invested, to give you hope, to buy more time. But the future never arrives. There's always another reason to delay, another excuse, another goalpost moved. Tactic number 10, emotional blackmail. This is a broader category that includes many of the above. Emotional blackmail uses fear, obligation, and guilt, often abbreviated as FOG, to control you. Fear, if you leave me, I'll hurt myself. Obligation, after everything I sacrificed for you, Guilt, I can't believe you'd do this to me after all we've been through. When you operate in the fog, you're not making free choices. You're trying to manage someone else's emotions. Part 3. Why manipulation works on smart people. Here's something important to understand. Being manipulated has nothing to do with intelligence. Smart people get manipulated all the time. Highly educated people, successful people, people who are strong in every other area of their lives. Why? Because manipulation doesn't attack your intellect, it attacks your emotions, your needs, and your blind spots. Why manipulation works. Number 1, the need for connection. Humans are wired for belonging. We need to be loved, accepted, and seen. This is not weakness, it's biology. Our survival depended on group belonging for millions of years. Manipulators exploit this need. They offer connection, love, and acceptance, then threaten to withdraw it unless you comply. Your brain experiences the threat of social rejection as physical pain, so you comply to avoid the pain. Why manipulation works. Number 2, cognitive dissonance. When someone treats you well sometimes and badly other times, your brain struggles to reconcile the contradiction. You tell yourself, they're not all bad. They were so kind last week. They bought me that gift. They said they love me. Maybe I'm the problem. This inconsistency keeps you trapped. Your brain would rather believe you're at fault than accept that someone you love is harming you deliberately. Why manipulation works. Number 3, the sunk cost fallacy. You've invested so much time, energy, love, money, or hope that leaving feels like admitting it was all a waste. So you stay, hoping that if you just give a little more, try a little harder, be a little more patient, it will finally pay off. Why manipulation works. Number 4, gradual normalization. Manipulation often starts small. A tiny boundary push here, a small guilt trip there, a subtle gaslighting comment that you barely notice. You adapt, you accommodate, you make excuses, and over time, what was once unacceptable becomes normal. This is how people end up in relationships they would have run from on day one. The frog in boiling water metaphor applies perfectly. If you throw a frog into hot water, it jumps out. But if you put it in cold water and heat it slowly, it cooks without realizing. Why manipulation works. Number 5, isolation. Manipulators often work to isolate their targets from friends, family, and other sources of support. They criticize your friends, create drama with your family, make it difficult for you to maintain outside relationships. When you're isolated, you have no one to reality check with, no one to say, "That doesn't sound right to me," no one to hold a mirror to what's happening. You're alone with the manipulator's version of reality. The psychologist Dr. Harriet Lerner writes, "When we tolerate behavior that violates our values or our well-being, we don't just lose ourselves in that moment, we lose ourselves over time." Manipulation works because it's gradual. By the time you realize what's happening, you're already deep inside the fog. Part 4, the manipulator's mindset. To protect yourself from manipulation, it helps to understand what's happening inside the manipulator. Not to excuse them, but to recognize the patterns. The entitlement mindset. Many manipulators genuinely believe they deserve special treatment. They see the world as divided into 2 categories, people who serve their needs, and people who don't matter. Rules apply to others, not to them. Lack of empathy. While not all manipulators are clinical narcissists or sociopaths, many have significant deficits in empathy. They can understand what you're feeling, they just don't care. Your emotions are data to be used, not experiences to be respected. Viewed relationships as transactions. For manipulators, relationships are not about mutual care and connection. They're about what they can get. Every interaction is a calculation. What can I extract from this person? How can I get them to do what I want? Inability to tolerate vulnerability. Many manipulators are deeply insecure underneath the surface. Their manipulation is a defense mechanism, a way to control their environment so they never have to feel powerless, vulnerable, or out of control. This doesn't excuse their behavior. Understanding is not the same as forgiving, but it does help you stop asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" and start asking, "Am I willing to continue being treated this way?" Dr. George K. Simon writes, "The manipulator's goal is to win, to dominate, and to control. Your feelings, your needs, your rights, these are obstacles to be overcome, not realities to be respected." Part 5, how to protect yourself, the shield. Now let's get to the most important part. How do you protect yourself? How do you recognize manipulation in real time? How do you respond effectively? And how do you heal after being manipulated? Here is your shield. Tool number 1, trust your gut. This is the foundation. If something feels off, it probably is. Your body often knows before your mind does. The tension in your chest, the knot in your stomach, the exhaustion after certain conversations, the feeling of walking on eggshells. These are not random. They're signals. Pay attention to them. If a relationship consistently leaves you feeling drained, confused, or small, you don't need to prove why. The feeling is the evidence. Tool number 2, name what's happening. Gaslighting loses power when you name it. I don't appreciate you telling me my feelings are wrong. Guilt trips lose power when you name them. It sounds like you're trying to make me feel guilty for saying no. You don't have to argue. You don't have to convince the manipulator. You just have to name it for yourself. The naming breaks the spell. It shifts you from confusion to clarity. Tool number 3, pause before responding. Manipulators often create urgency. I need an answer now. If you don't decide right this second, the opportunity is gone. Say something. Why are you being so quiet? You can always say, I need to think about that. I'll get back to you. I'm not ready to decide right now. The pause breaks the momentum of manipulation. It gives you time to get out of the fog, fear, obligation, guilt, and into clarity. Tool number 4, set and enforce boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They're gates. You decide who enters and under what conditions. Examples of boundaries. I'm not available for conversations that include yelling. We can talk when you're calm. I won't continue this discussion if you're going to insult me. I need 24 hours to think before I make decisions like this. I'm not comfortable lending money again. I care about you, but that doesn't work for me. Then, and this is essential, you enforce them. Boundaries without enforcement are just suggestions. If you set a boundary and the person crosses it, you must follow through with the consequence. I told you I won't continue conversations that include yelling. I'm hanging up now. We can talk tomorrow when we're both calm. Tool number 5, build external reality checks. Manipulation thrives in isolation. Talk to people you trust. Share what's happening. Ask, does this sound right to you? Am I being unreasonable? A trusted friend, therapist, or support group can often see what you've been trained not to see. They can hold the mirror when you've been staring at a funhouse reflection for too long. Tool number 6, strengthen your sense of self. Manipulation works when you're unsure of who you are, when you know your values, your needs, your deal breakers, your non-negotiables. You're harder to move. Take time to ask yourself, what do I actually want? Not what they want. What I want. What do I need to feel safe and respected? What am I willing to tolerate? What am I not willing to tolerate ever? Write it down. Keep it somewhere you can see it. This is your anchor when the fog rolls in. Tool number 7, learn to say no without over-explaining. Manipulators will often pressure you to justify your no. Why can't you? What's the reason? If you really cared, you would. You do not owe anyone an explanation for your boundaries. No, that doesn't work for me is a complete sentence. I'm not available is a complete sentence. I've made a different decision is a complete sentence. When you over-explain, you give the manipulator material to argue with. When you simply state your boundary without justification, there's nothing to argue with. Tool number 8, document. If you're in a situation where manipulation is ongoing in a workplace, a family system, a legal context, document everything. Save texts, emails, voicemails. Keep a journal of incidents with dates and times, not because you're paranoid, because manipulators often rewrite history. Documentation is your anchor to reality. Tool number 9, the grey rock method. For situations where you cannot leave a family relationship, a workplace, a CO parenting arrangement, the grey rock method can be useful. The idea is to become as boring and uninteresting as a grey rock. You give short, neutral answers. You don't react emotionally. You don't share personal information. You become uninteresting to the manipulator who feeds on drama and reaction. Aha, that's interesting. I'll think about that. Okay. Not engaging, not reacting, just grey. Part 6. What if you are the manipulator? We've spent this entire video talking about how to protect yourself from manipulation. But here's a question that's harder to ask. What if you're the one manipulating? Not on purpose, not maliciously, but out of fear, insecurity, or learned behavior. Manipulation is not always conscious. Many people who manipulate learned these behaviors as survival strategies in childhood. When you grew up in an environment where direct requests were ignored or punished, you learned indirect ways to get your needs met. You learned to manipulate not because you're a bad person, but because it was the only way to survive. Here are signs you might be using manipulative tactics without realizing it. You frequently use guilt to get what you want. You give the silent treatment when you're upset. You play the victim to avoid taking responsibility. You exaggerate your suffering to get sympathy or attention. You make people feel responsible for your emotions. You have a hard time accepting no without trying to change the person's mind. If any of this resonates, here's what you can do. First, take a deep breath. Recognizing this in yourself is not shameful. It's courageous. Most people never look in this mirror. Second, practice direct communication. Instead of hinting, manipulating, or guilt-tripping, say what you actually want clearly and respectfully. I'm feeling lonely. Would you be willing to spend some time with me? Instead of, I guess I'll just be alone again. No one ever wants to be with me. Third, take responsibility for your own emotions. No one else is responsible for making you feel happy, secure, or loved. Those are your responsibilities. Other people can support you, but they can't fix you. Fourth, consider therapy. If you recognize patterns of manipulation in yourself, a therapist can help you understand where they came from and how to replace them with healthier ways of relating. Fifth, apologize. If you've manipulated someone, apologize specifically, without excuses. I realize I've been using guilt to get you to do things. That's not okay. I'm sorry. I'm working on it. Conclusion, reclaim your agency. Let's come back to where we started. That conversation where you left confused, guilty, and somehow agreeing to something you didn't want. Now you know what happened. You see the patterns. You have the tools. You understand the tactics. You know how to name it, pause, set boundaries, and reach out for reality checks. But here's the deeper truth. Protecting yourself from manipulation is not just about tactics. It's about reclaiming something more fundamental, your agency, the belief that you have the right to your own feelings, the right to your own time, the right to say no without explanation, the right to walk away from anyone who treats your boundaries as obstacles to be overcome, the right to trust your own perception even when someone tells you you're crazy. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus wrote, "No one can harm you without your consent." He didn't mean that others can't hurt you. He meant that the deepest harm, the loss of your self-trust, your autonomy, your sense of reality only, happens when you give others permission to define it for you. You have the right to be treated with respect. You have the right to trust your own perception. You have the right to protect your peace. And you have the right to leave any relationship that consistently asks you to abandon any of these rights. The manipulation tactics you now recognize only work when you don't see them. Now you see them. And what you see, you can choose to resist. Not because you're angry, not because you're paranoid, but because you finally know your peace is not negotiable. The writer and poet Maya Angelou once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." If someone shows you through repeated patterns that they will manipulate, gaslight, guilt trip, or control, you believe them. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with clarity. And then act. Set the boundary. Have the conversation. Walk away if you need to. Protect your peace like the precious thing it is, because it is. The greatest weapon against manipulation is not anger, it's clarity. If this video helped you see something you've been struggling to name, share it with someone who might need to see it too. Subscribe for more deep dives into psychology, relationships, and protecting your peace. I'll see you in the next one.